Let's take, some of the more commonly known ones like ChatGPT or Google Gemini and all of those things that people go to on a regular basis.
Right.
They don't have guardrails necessarily in place to protect them from putting information out there that they can't get back, and understanding how they're contributing to the data set on which these models are being trained and who might have access to that.
You're looking for answers, or as simple as drafting an email, you're just kind of giving some information from your business and putting it out from your lens, John. Any best practices for businesses across industries to kind of, have that level of defense internally?
I think you have to establish a set of AI security capabilities. And what I mean by that, it is the set of things that you have in your security landscape to be able to add this layer. Because yes, AI is just another system, if you will, an application where there's data involved and a software application involved. The challenge is understanding that those foundational security capabilities still have to exist, the
Correct.
ability to detect and respond and all that. But there are emerging security capabilities that are needed. The ability to be able to know and understand the configuration of that AI system.
Hi, you're watching The Mainstream. I am Simran Shiwalkar, your host for today, and we are back with the latest episode of Voice of CISO, where we get inside the minds of tech leaders driving real change when we talk about cybersecurity ecosystem. Today, I'm particularly thrilled and honored because joining me is a leader who has spent over 35 years at the intersection of cybersecurity, strategy, and business leadership. We are joined by Mr. John Sapp Jr. He is the Vice President and CISO at Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a leader who has seen cybersecurity evolve from firewalls and fixes to boardroom conversations and transformation. At Texas Mutual, he is helping shape a security first culture combining cloud native strategies with people focused practices that stick and go well together. He's also served on advisory boards for leading cybersecurity firms such as CrowdStrike and Veracode, among the others, offering a clear eyed and real perspective on modern cybersecurity landscape and leadership. Well, I am particularly thrilled to drive this conversation and hear some amazing insights from John. So, without any further ado, let's begin. Firstly, John, thank you so much for being a part of the series and joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Hey, absolutely. That being said, you have been in this tech space for a long time, over 3 decades now in security. What has changed the most from your lens, and what has stayed the same when we talk about protecting things that matter?
So I think the first thing I think about is, about 3 decades ago, 30 years ago to be exact, in 1995, when the first CISO role was created at Citibank, where Steve Katz was in that role. I'm going to call that CISO 1.0. And it required us to be highly technical in terms of skills and knowledge. Then you fast forward about 15 years in, let's say about 2010, that's when the evolution of the role occurred to what I'm going to call CISO 2.0. And we saw a transition to being more of a business leader and being a business enabler, which required us to increase our business acumen and understand how the business operates and what are the assets we're trying to protect. And that brings us to where we are now in terms of what I call CISO 3.0, that just 5 years after CISO 2.0, I think one of the catalyst events was the World Economic Forum in 2015. And that's where we started to think about things in terms of risk quantification. And that's when we became, in my opinion, risk managers. So we've seen an evolution from being technical to layering on being a business enabler and now arriving at being a risk manager. And it's all about focusing on business risk context and cyber resilience.
Wonderful. And I like the way you put it from CISO 1.0 to CISO 3.0. You've seen it all, the evolution of, cybersecurity landscape and tech for that matter. That being said, John, I'm aware that Texas Mutual, you've built a security culture that goes beyond the technical aspects. In a world where we are, still experiencing breaches with human error, how do you kind of build a culture, or in an organization where security is also like a major concern and not something you just comply or have it aligned with?
Yeah, it really is because we've always known and thought about things as people being the weakest link of sorts, not in terms of intelligence, but that's where they can either open the door to an attacker or prevent an attack. And especially when you think about the proliferation of social engineering and phishing attacks, and that's where now attackers are getting access, a culture of security is extremely important. And the way we've done that, Texas Mutual has been to think about it from a human behavior risk management perspective, which is one of those areas of risk management that we focus on. And it's about understanding the behaviors of people, leveraging your technologies to understand what behaviors people are, what actions people are taking that could expose us to a threat being actively exploiting us. And so when we think about it from that standpoint, we understand based on the volume of email that people may receive, their roles and responsibilities in an organization, what makes them a target, and what types of activities that they are performing that could put them at risk. And because human error is always continue to be one of the leading factors of breach. So we designed the program and an approach that allows us to improve our culture of security and measure the maturity of that. And we do so by a scale of what we call very risky, somewhat vigilant, and highly vigilant, so that based on a scoring system that takes in different criteria and information gathered from all of the different security technologies that we have in place, whether it be a secure web gateway and understanding what types of websites people are going to, or a data protection solution that is detecting what type of data people are uploading or downloading to the cloud or transmitting across the network. So now we can see that those actions begin to paint a picture. And then you incorporate into that your simulated phishing campaigns and how people
Right.
perform in that regard. And all those things kind of come together to give this score. And each individual has a human risk index, is what we call it, that actually outlines that. And then we have an organizational score. So now we can actually measure and manage human behavior risk the same way we do people's performance in their job.
Wonderful. And I think that perfectly aligns with, because most of the attacks are kind of internal, is what we've been observing. And there's a common belief that either you have been attacked and your business has gone for a toss, or either you've been attacked and you're not aware at all. So I think that perfectly sums up and brings me to my next question, John. We've been hearing about AI, cloud, and speed. I mean, cloud had its era. AI is now taking the center stage. With all of these innovations happening, at a breakneck speed, what are some of the real risks that you think companies are kind of still sleeping on, or they're still kind of overlooking those?
Yeah, so I think we all think about and have heard about some of the regulatory things, and that's just standard across the globe. But when I think about it, the challenge with trying to enable the responsible use and secure adoption of AI is the strategy and the approach that I take, is that you have to think about the different types of threats within that. How do you accomplish that? Because it's easy to establish a set of guiding principles, responsible use principles, and those things, because there are frameworks for that. But when you think about it at the next level down, looking at it from an AI threat map and really understanding what are the threats to it, both positive and potentially negative. So on the positive side, of course, we can achieve operational efficiency, improve customer experience and productivity gains and all those things. We can reduce the cost of doing business. We can eliminate repetitive tasks. But on the other side, you have to think about, and I don't know that this gets enough focus to the point of your question, which is threats from these AI systems? What threats do these AI systems themselves pose to our organization? You think about hallucinations and being able to understand that. So that's one thing, that creates error where error didn't exist. Understanding the threats for using these systems, because as people utilize these things, you have a number of systems out there that continues to grow daily. And when people use them, let's take, some of the more commonly known ones like ChatGPT or Google Gemini and all of those things that people go to on a regular basis.
Right.
They don't have guardrails necessarily in place to protect them from putting information out there that they can't get back, and understanding how they're contributing to the data set on which these models are being trained and who might have access to that intentionally. I think it's the unintended consequences
Right.
is what people are not really thinking about. And in terms of your question, that's what I think they're sleeping on.
Absolutely. I think when you say that how much data is too much data, when you put something into ChatGPT and you're looking for answers, or as simple as drafting an email, you're just kind of giving some information from your business and putting it out there. And any best practices, even though it's a little subjective matter, but from your lens, John, any best practices for businesses across industries to kind of have that level of defense internally.
I think you have to establish a set of AI security capabilities. And what I mean by that, it is the set of things that you have in your security landscape to be able to add this layer. Because yes, AI is just another system, if you will, an application where there's data involved and a software application involved. The challenge is understanding that those foundational security capabilities still have to exist, the
Correct.
ability to detect and respond and all that. But there are emerging security capabilities that are needed. The ability to be able to know and understand the configuration of that AI system, because you can't just put a web application firewall in front of it. You have to know and understand based on the model and what its configuration settings are, what guardrails are available, and understanding how to set those. And I think the best practice approach and the best way I can simplify it is this, is from a business standpoint, you should have guidelines around what is responsible use for your organization. Define that for your users. And then on the technology side, you should have security guardrails, things that allow them to be able to adopt and use AI technologies, but without basically slowing them down,
Right.
and being able to enable them to do so securely by providing those guardrails that will keep them in between the lines, if you will, and be able to protect them against those unknown or unexpected consequences of utilizing AI.
Absolutely. Against that background, John, I'm aware that you once cut cyber costs by over millions of dollars and made things stronger. I am particularly, curious to know from you what has been your approach with doing more with less without risking the business.
I think the key for me is always when I come into an organization, I wanted to establish a security reference architecture. And what I mean by that is having some very domain specific capabilities defined. Some people have seen it in kind of a honeycomb shape. I tend to take more of a layered level approach to it. At level zero is the overall security program. Level one, I start to define security domains, such as from a risk management standpoint and being able to identify that. And then the next layer down, and that risk management standpoint, that's the lens for visibility for your governance function and being able to report into your enterprise management, risk management capability. But the next layer down is about protections, protecting the applications, the cloud, the data, your network, the identities. And then you have security operations. So looking at that and understanding what are the different things that I need to in order to be able to do so, and then evaluating your overall portfolio of existing technologies and see where your gaps are, where you have duplicates. And
Right.
really the key was eliminating duplicate capabilities, identifying taking more of a platform approach to it, the way you see vendors do today, such as like CrowdStrike and others, where you get much more capability that's integrated, and being able to eliminate and reduce the cost and the complexity of it. And I'd say that's really the key, reducing complexity and duplication, which then allowed me to take and deploy more of my strategy, which is to utilize not just our FTEs, and we have always had, at my organizations where I've been the CISO, we've managed that level of cost with regards to the FTEs. And you do so by leveraging managed security services for 24/7 response and a number of other things, but also professional services so that you can be more deliverable based versus time and materials type. So that's, to me, was the key to being able to do more with less.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, John, for kind of, giving your comprehensive view on that and drawing parallels from your experience. Well, I also would like to understand from you for a leader who has spent decades, working on tech and cybersecurity. You have, of course, you've obviously seen the shift in the threat landscape. Any best, recommendations or any word of advice for the coming generation of CISOs or the cybersecurity leaders, especially for those just stepping into the spotlight?
I think the number one piece of advice I have, and I've been asked this question before, and I've thought about it, and my answer has kind of evolved. But where I've arrived at is the first thing is value learning over expertise, because many of them, coming out of college programs or other training programs, getting certifications, that says that you have some knowledge of the subject matter expert. But value learning over expertise, learning from those who have been in the industry for a period of time, those who are relatively new. But it's also network and connect with current industry leaders and reach out to them, because we're always willing to help the next generation of leaders. And so what we want to do is, I suggest to them, just expand your network and be able to connect and understand the challenges of the role, because it is more than just book knowledge or having been able to master a lab. There are a lot of things that are outside of just pure technical knowledge. And that's, as I talk about, we started having to be technical, evolved to being business leaders, and now we're risk managers, and start to understand how all those things fit together, and understanding who your stakeholders are, and understand what their pressures are, understand what their needs are, and understand how you can be an enabler to an
Right.
organization.
Absolutely, John. I think today when we look at, CISOs or security leaders, they are not just protecting the threat landscape, they are not just building resilient, infra, but they are also kind of business enablers. The role has expanded over the years, it has evolved. And I think it goes without saying today, CISOs, if this, they are wearing multiple hats. So thank you so much for, kind of helping us with your key insights and some best practices as well, and also sharing your journey with us. This conversation has been super insightful, and personally, I look forward to connect with you again.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate the conversation, and best of luck to everyone out there. We are protectors.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you.